To the new episode of the Timeline. We will be talking about a very important anniversary where the Arab Spring started 15 years ago in a town called Sidi Bouzid in Tunisia. And we will be discussing what went wrong and why there is not much promising signs. And with Jesse, my co host. Hi, Jesse, you're good?
I'm very much once again so glad to be here.
Great to be with you. And we have a great guest, Mohamed Khelifi. Welcome, Mohamed.
Thank you, Hamid, and thank you, Jesse, for having me here.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much for.
Mohamed. Yeah, Mohamed is from the town that this Mohamed Bouazizi put himself on fire. Mohamed Khalifi is an author and lawyer and human rights activist who was within the revolution which triggered the Arab Spring. And so 15 years of strange, some happy, some sad history. But what do you remember? I think you are a friend of Mohammed who put himself on fire on 17th of December and passed away 1 month or little less than 1 month after that. So, how you remember your friendship with Mohammed? Mohammed, your names are same.
We're a lot of Mohammeds there. Um,
Yes.
uh, it was, I would say, a poverty connection because we were all the poor kids working in the central market of the town of Sidi Bouzid, where people would unload loads of vegetables or fruits, and then you get paid, whether with some pennies sometimes or with goods, with vegetables and fruits themselves as a payment for your labor. Mohammed was doing that definitely more than me because I was also trying to go to school, and he would get paid with those vegetables and fruits and take them to the small town center and try to sell them separately to make some profits. So he was a very calm and nice person, and we did. I remember very well that he was not a person who, for example, would incite for violence or everything, which was a very common rumor in the aftermath of the revolution that he initiated some kind of conflict with the police when they seized the vegetables he was trying to sell.
Yeah, so did you have the chance to meet him after he did this protest of self-immolation, or you didn't
No,
have the chance to talk to him?
absolutely not. The regime was there very strict about not allowing anyone or any media or any other person to talk to Bouazizi because after his self-immolation, he was transported directly to the capital, and we heard nothing about him until January 3rd when the news announced his death. Well, some rumors were, some information were already speculating that he died 2 days after the Self Immolation Act, but the regime did not want to disclose that information because they knew that will cause more protests, which what exactly happened when his death was announced on January 3rd. That sparked a lot of more protests around the my region, and technically moved to the second phase of the Tunisian revolution of having protests widespread all over the country. The town of Sidi Bouzid was protesting for at least 17 days before we had all the other cities join those protests.
I know that you've written extensively about so many of these experiences, both personal and public. I wonder if you could tell our audience a little bit about that January in 2011 when you were trying to get to Sidi Bouzid and see what
Mhm.
was going on and the tension and difficulties and frustrations of actually trying to get to the town.
So the first I heard about the news that there was the death of Mohamed Bouazizi in front of the mayor's office. I was in another city called Sfax, and I directly tried to get to my hometown, but it was very hard because there was actually a siege around it with thousands of police officers, and no one accepted to transport people to Sidi Bouzid. So I managed somehow to get on a bus to get there. That was full of people who were stuck outside of Sidi Bouzid and were trying to get back to their homes. We arrived there, and the scenes were honestly almost surreal. There were tires on fire everywhere, smoke everywhere. One of my friends managed to give me a ride with his small motorcycle to get me to his house where he was hosting me. And then we went out directly to see how tense the situation was. The anger, the people started attacking police vehicles because they did not know why all this police force was doing there. There was a huge banner of Ben Ali back then that was in the center of the town, looking at everyone. I say like a god because his picture was very scary, but that banner was on fire. And I think that symbolic act of ripping off that banner and putting it on fire really took the start of the uprising to another level. People started accepting that they can say no and that they can protest, which was something impossible a couple of days ago. Those were words that could get you to jail right away. So once I managed to make it there, and I saw a lot of my childhood friends protesting, I enjoyed them right away. Joined their protests, and in the morning I would say the protests were more organized by the workers' union UGTT, and it was more politicized. There was some opposition figures there, so there was two facades of the protests in the town for at least 20 days.
Yeah, did you ever think on those days that this will bring the end of 23 years of Bin Ali regime, but not just in Tunisia, it will destroy the Mubarak's regime and the Gaddafi and all over the Middle East and North Africa. Did you feel such? I mean, energy is coming from that little town?
Honestly, at the beginning, no, not at all. We had already some uh, idea about previous protests. I feel that what happened in Sidi Bouzid in 2010 was a result of a lot of accumulations. You had huge protests in Gafsa, there's right next to Sidi Bouzid, for 6 months in 2008. And then 2009, there were protests in Bingarden in the southern part of the country.
Mm.
So in 2010, to be honest, we thought that's another wave, and that will be it. Maybe a couple of months, and then it will all end. But things went so quickly, and then we started hearing political slogans being raised during the marches, saying "Khobzula ben Ali, bread and water, and no more Ben Ali." And we knew that we were probably about to topple one of the most brutal dictatorships in the history of my region, at least. But nobody expected it would go that far, and um, it gave us a very great feeling of nirvana because we didn't even know that we are able to do this, and that regimes, even though they can look so brutal and so violent and so powerful, they are very fragile in front of the will of people if they decide to stand up and say no.
Yeah, are Tunisians looking this sacrifice with? I mean, do they remember, respect the memory of Mohamed Bouazizi, and is there any such respect in Arab world in general? How his memory is remembered?
Well, I would say, unfortunately, Bouaziz's memory or legacy is very controversial in Tunisia now. there is a part of people who really respect him as a person because he had the bravery to protest and sacrifice his body technically for all of what happened, even if he didn't know that these would be the results. There are people who respect and have a lot of nostalgia and love to what happened during the revolution, that we dared to say no and protest and topple the Ben Ali regime, and we have our freedom back. There is another sector of the Tunisian society, I would say, who are filled with ideas of regret that this was wrong, that Ben Ali was good, that who cares about freedom of expression if we are hungry, forgetting, unfortunately, very quickly how bad inequalities were under Ben Ali, how bad poverty was. Maybe the economic situation was slightly better, but better for whom? It was better for certain classes in the country and for certain regions. So people who are privileged are not able to process that. People who were very oppressed, who didn't have any voice, who were totally voiceless, managed to topple a system that offered them privileges for years and years. So you always have this debate and this online battle, I call it, of people insulting Bouazizi nonstop and people who respect him and wish that he rests in peace. That's why I said it's a very controversial legacy. At least in Sidi Bouzid, he's still very well respected. He has a huge banner of him in the center of the city. But other places you can hear all the stories around a person who does not deserve that because his acts should not be blamed for counter-revolutionary acts that happened after the Tunisian revolution and that worked so hard to destroy everything people tried to build.
Was that sentiment still present in the protests that then came about around 2018? Was that same sort of enculturation, the feeling in those protests?
You mean the protests of 2018 that were against the government before Saied came to power? If I'm being correct.
Yes.
I think that sentiment was there. Even though we're talking in 2018 and later we're talking about the new generation. Now we're talking about young people who were not there during the 2011 revolution. We're talking about a generation that uses different platforms for communication. The 2011 millennials used a lot Facebook. Now this new generation uses Discord, Kick, other platforms that are more visual and organized differently. So I think there was a revolutionary sentiment that is still present. However, the position from what happened 2011 is, I think, this new generation is not very attached to it emotionally because they did not witness it. Most of them were kids, under 18 probably, but at least they are still benefiting, I would say, from that revolutionary wave of the ability to protest after at least 60 years of not being even able to raise a banner outside that has a political slogan on it.
So it at least has a strong sense of historical context for them.
Yes, I would say definitely yes. But at the same time, there is maybe some disconnection because the new waves of protesters are focusing on new slogans. They have a new political leadership, new political class that is ruling, and sometimes they do not have a lot of maybe understanding regarding what happened in the Arab Spring, or simply it doesn't really matter for them because now they are faced with a new reality and they are trying to deal with it and they're trying to have a voice and have a say in what is going on with a political class, honestly, that learned nothing, that did not try to understand that listening to people is way better than pushing them to the streets and having them turn against you.
Yeah, Mohammed, after this tragic event, just 28 days after this, Bin Ali, the dictator of Tunisia, had to leave to Saudi Arabia, and there was a great happiness freedom, jubilation. And in 2014, you had this great constitution. In those days, I had the chance to visit Tunisia, and there was this uh, people were saying that Tunisia is becoming a model of democracy in Middle East, in North Africa. So now we see a different Tunisia, and it seems this experiment did not work well. And even in 2015, Tunisia was given a Nobel Prize for this successful transformation days, good days. So, looking retrospectively, I think you were also part of these changes and the positive developments. What went wrong? This is the main question that we need to ask, I think. What what
Mhm.
what you what you think? What was wrong? Why it did not go well?
I think a lot of things went wrong, but I don't want to be very biased because a lot of things went right at the same time. It was a spiral series of events. There was euphoric sentiment after 2011. We can do it all. We can make all the changes we want. We toppled the biggest dictatorship in North Africa, and now we can build an actual democracy. People started engaging actively in political life, whether it's in political parties or civil society or social movements. And people had energy to participate in public life, and they wanted to. The election of 2011 in October were transparent. That was the first time probably we see transparent election in Tunisia. Then the election of 2014. The 3 years were hard. We had political assassinations. We had a lot of protests too because people had a lot of willingness to protest. But then the result of the constitution after 3 years was the result of the whole tissue of Tunisian society. It had a lot of articles that satisfy maybe different classes or the different political spectrums of Tunisians' way of different ways of life. It was a good. I think it was a decent, good constitution. However, to answer the question on what went wrong and how did we end up honestly coming back to square one of
Exactly.
suppression of freedoms and oppression and having political prisoners and political prosecutions and kidnapping people, all of it is happening again, is due to a lot of factors. There were, I would say, I would consider fatal mistakes that happened during the decade from 2011 to 2019. The strong constitutional institutions that would probably protect the quasi democracy or the attempt of democracy that we wanted to have were not built. We did not have a constitutional tribunal or constitutional court that would protect the constitution and adjudicate constitutional litigations to protect freedoms. Um, we did not institutionalize a lot of organizations that were mentioned in the Constitution of 2014. High Council for the Judiciary, High Council for Education. It's a long list. I think it's 24 commission. I cannot mention all of them.
Mm.
So there was a lot of focus on the political life and direct battles or realpolitik of people fighting for seats and elections and everything. And we were very taken by that. Probably the political class was very taken by that and didn't focus on long-term protections of democracy that we were building. There was no success, unfortunately, in the economic questions. And the economic question is very crucial for the stability of Tunisia. So people had freedom of speech, could protest, could organize, but were struggling to find a job. And that, all of those factors led us to a lot of people thinking that democracy probably is not good and that I need to get a job and find food and fill my food basket. I don't care if I'm allowed to publish an article tomorrow, go to prison if I do. And if you have that sentiment, and a political void and some rejection of the political class. Someone out of nowhere who said nothing under Ben Ali, nothing under Bourguiba, nothing during, probably he only had the chance to talk after 2011. It was brought on TV every day. Comes out of nowhere and does a terrible power grab and decides that he is our father and he needs to take care of us and he needs to decide on our behalf, and goes on to destroy every single democratic institution we tried to build. I'm not saying things were perfect. Of course, we were still trying to have strong institutions. But if you send tanks to the parliament, this doesn't give me um, the understanding that you are protective of democracy. I don't think that we can build a democracy while we have the army tanks inside the shut down parliament, and then having every political leader thrown away, in prison. So what went wrong, I think, is the economic question that led people to accept a coup d'état, and maybe fragile democratic institutions that would have provided a lot of protections. If we had a constitutional court, probably we would have been able to adjudicate a lot of conflicts that its absence is giving Kais Saied a lot of maneuvering power to do whatever he wants, to decide whatever he wants. And other institutions would also probably provide some protection. So some things went wrong. We had a lot of also that wave of sending people to Syria that was very questionable. We had political assassinations that were happening. We had violence in the streets for some point, but we did good too. We managed to sit down on the table. Everyone was able to speak, and that's why in 2015 Tunisia got the Nobel Prize, because technically the political class of Tunisia worked to avoid a possible civil war, which didn't happen, luckily. Hence comes Nobel Prize. So we had a constitution that everyone participated in. Nahda tried to push articles they wanted to have. Civil society did too. The left did as well. The workers' union did. And it was almost a product of everyone. So if you compare it to the Constitution of 2022 written by one person, it's a tragedy. If you read both constitutions, you have a work of whole political class that represents the people, and a badly written constitution drafted by one person
Yeah.
in a horrible way.
Is there, Mohammed, is there a soul searching or self questioning? You know, we know in Tunisia, in those good days, there was
Mm-hmm.
Nahda movement, the political Islamists, and also
Mm-hmm.
secularists. So it was very divided democratic alliance. So
Mm-hmm.
how do they discuss their performances, their attitudes in those days? And now they are combined. They are brought together in jail of Tunisia
Mm-hmm.
under the new ruler. So how they react? Do they get some lessons, some learning from these bad experiences? How do you see this?
I think that's the most important question. Are there lessons learned? Is the political class willing to learn and to do some revisions and to do some compromises? And that's a big question mark here, because Ennahda made a lot of mistakes. Nida Tunis liberals made a lot of mistakes. The Popular Front, that is representative of the left, made mistakes as well. But there were attempts during the last 10 years of the last decade to work something out together. Well, now I feel the political class is reintroducing the same faces that are rejected, unfortunately, by the majority of Tunisian people and the public opinion court to the public scene. And that is causing more harm than good to the political opposition in Tunisia. A lot of people are sick of some classic names. They don't want to see them in public life. They think they are involved in some criminal acts, in conspiring against the state. I read the investigation report of, and it's ridiculous, by the way. So if the political class is willing to have some internal discussions to look again at why are we being rejected by the Tunisian public, why Tunisian public is leaning towards dictatorship and somehow sometimes enjoying looking at people being thrown in jail. Maybe some new faces can make a big difference. Maybe some even some ideas about your economic conceptions or plans or projects to Tunisia would make a big difference. That this constant practice of taking out loans and relying on the international community for financing drained Tunisia's ability to have internal development, which, by the way, Kais Saied is doing the same now after his whole narrative on national sovereignty and that we do not deal with the outside world, but they are getting into a lot of debt that is terrible. I think a lot of those revisions can probably make a big difference. And I really do not have a clear answer on how the Tunisians will take that, but people are trying to think even of, they call the third line. They're trying to say we're rejecting the political class of the before July 25th. We're rejecting the current political regime that is oppressive and dictator, and it's an actual new dictatorship rising, and we are trying to build something new. And I think also accepting that maybe the new generation is trying to organize differently is also okay, because a lot of the political leaders that we saw were young at some point, and they went and created their own political organizations and did a lot of work for 30 and 40 years. And some people don't want to see them again, which I, to an extent, understand.
In such a community that is really a polyclass country and a polyclass culture, I think a lot of times these kinds of conversations are difficult to have in terms of explication and the sort of on ground discussion, just as you're talking about. But one modality that can often cross cultures and cross classes is art. And I know you've written a novel, your wonderful novel Escape, which addresses some of these issues. I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about writing that novel and its reception and what you may have hoped to achieve by putting these sort of issues within art.
Mm-hmm. Jesse, I think a lot of Tunisian youth who was very involved in the political, I would say, la chose publique or public life in Tunis. I was, for example, very engaged in Manishim Samah. That was a social movement in Tunisia, for example. Had this shift towards art as a result of deceptions. People felt that they cannot achieve uh, things or make differences on political stage, so they switched to art to at least express themselves. So comes my attempt of writing a novel that was fictitious, but it's a fiction, but it is within the historical context of the Arab Spring. And I try to somehow document what happened with the lenses of fictional characters that allegedly participate in the Tunisian revolution. The novel was received with a lot of critique, for example, for involving some explicit scenes or some violent scenes, but some people also praised it and got the Ramburg Award, which is good. However, I feel that a lot of Tunisian youth switched to art, to producing songs, especially a lot of rap songs. That was very. It was a good alternative for people who wanted to say what they wanted to say, writing as well. So I think that novel its titled Escape, was an attempt to at least try to testify on what happened in Tunisia in the form of a fiction. However, what I'm working on now is nonfiction. I'm trying to seriously document the way of events, the timeline from 2009 almost to 2019. Though those 10 years, I think, are super important in Tunisian modern history and in the region's history as well, to document how the student union, how different political parties were working under dictatorship, how they were exposed after that to the public, and how they engaged in public life, how mistakes happened, and the deception afterwards, and how we found ourselves facing a coup later that I don't want to say ended everything, but I want to say that is now blocking
Yeah.
any democratic practice in the country.
Yeah, we are excited to see and read your book, the fiction book about the non-fiction book, sorry, of the story
Mhm.
of this 10, 15 years. But you know, Mohammed, you are in the conjunction of not related to Mohamed Bouazizi, who was
Mhm.
the street vendor triggered the Tunisian Revolution and Arab Spring, but also you are connected to the ruler of the current Tunisian government,
Said.
Professor Said Kais, sorry, Kais Saied.
Kais Saied.
So
Yes.
Kais Saied was your professor, but he was elected in 2019 with 70% support. So what made
Yeah.
him first question is, after this jubilation, all revolution, lots of excitement, what made him attractive to Tunisian people? The first question. The
Mhm.
second question is, why a professor of constitutional law turned into a kind of a dictator? So
Mhm.
as he was your professor, I think you can give us some hints or explanations to this for
Mhm.
both questions.
Yes. Yeah, I feel I'm always somehow related to the people
Yeah.
who make huge influences on our history. But also, I feel Tunisia is small. We all somehow know each other. To, Kais Saied was the professor of constitutional law in the law school that I went to in Tunis, and he was a very um, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but a person with very robotic rituals. He would come at the same time to order the same coffee and go ahead and lecture the same class for over 20 years or 25 years. Um, what made Kais Saied appealing to Tunisia within that context were several reasons. The short answer is that he played the Tunisian people, and the long answer is that he relied on the fact that there was some rejection of the current political class, whether it's Nahda or Nida Tunis or Nabil Qaroui's Qalb Tunis or the
Hmm.
left or the unions. There was this generalized rejection of political class, a bad economic situation in the country. And he introduced himself as a savior. He introduced himself as someone who is clean, and I have reservations on using that term, who did not do politics before, who was always invited to the national TV or the different radios to speak about the situation in Tunisia from a constitutional standpoint. And people imagine that this person is too clean and not corrupt, and he is a constitutional law professor, that he is the perfect candidate to be the president of Tunisia and that he will save it. So he used that and somehow got a lot of votes. There are a lot of speculations saying that there was already support for Kais Saied from certain countries online on Facebook pages to push his campaign forward. I wouldn't be surprised if that actually happened. And then once in power, he engineered or set up within 2 years, ending the democratic experience in Tunisia and shutting down the parliament and any other institution that was created by the constitution of 2014. And I would say this happened before in history. I cannot recall the name, unfortunately, but I remember that this happening with a Peruvian president who introduced himself as a person who's apolitical, didn't do politics before. He's just a clean engineer with a perfectly clean record. And once in power, he staged a coup as well. And those people, if we read history, they never have happy ending stories. So if you use the same democratic process that you now are insulting every day and calling the black destiny in Tunisia, if you used it to get to power and then do a power grab and set it up with support of countries that we are all aware of, I don't think those scenarios and this behavior in Tunisia ends up well, because Tunisian people are now maybe supportive. They gave you the chance twice, but the turnout of events can be very surprising. And I recall that in 2011, nobody ever imagined Ben Ali out of the country, and we had him out in 23 days.
So is Professor Kais Saied still popular with the people, and is he delivering some economic success? How you rate him?
The diagnosis of his popularity is I think, is complicated. Kais Saied still have somehow some support base in Tunisia as the person who is throwing everyone in jail, everyone who's corrupt and who's conspiring against Tunisia. And we're still trying to know what are these conspiracies exactly. If it's meeting in a house to discuss politics, then I think we're all conspiring against Tunisia except Kais Saied. On terms of economic achievements, we are witnessing absolutely nothing. We are witnessing a huge economic failure in Tunisia on all levels. There was an attempt to create domestic or local companies like cooperatives, and that is heading towards a big failure. There is absolutely no job creation, which is and was an essential demand for the Tunisian people. Employment. That was literally an essential slogan during the Tunisian Revolution of 2011. There is no development of infrastructure. There is no serious work on solving the issues of environment. For example, in Gibbs, we are having protests for technically months now, and there is no willingness from the state to address that issue and save people from suffocating because of all the toxic waste that is happening in Gibbs. We had a strike by young doctors in Tunis because they are asking for raises in wages. They are paid minimum wage as doctors and are really living in hard economic situations. So, and on terms of serving people or like having economic achievements, I see that Tunisia is witnessing one of its worst economic phases in modern history, honestly. On terms of freedoms, it's really bad too. We witnessed journalists being kidnapped in broad light 2 days ago. We witnessed people having sentences of 50 years and 20 years just because they had a WhatsApp conversation talking about how can we oppose Kais Saied. Everyone did that all the time. How is that considered an act of terrorism? We had people who are abroad posting a video criticizing Kais Saied and his judicial system or branch now. I'm saying his judicial branch because he is controlling it, and getting 50 years as a sentence the next very week. So we are witnessing the worst of the worst on all the levels. We
Yeah.
have had terrible dictators with some economic achievements. We had a good level of freedoms with bad economic achievements. Now we're having terrible situation of freedoms with terrible economic situations. So we're having both of the worst of both experiences, unfortunately.
Yeah, Jesse, you would ask something, I think. Sorry.
Oh no, I think it's interesting. You know, Winston Churchill famously said, "Democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others." And I think that what's going on in Tunisia is not entirely different from what we're seeing in the United States in terms of a particular personality who's outside of the scope of normative politics, who represents themselves in a certain particular light, but underneath that light, there's an enormous amount of autocratic activity. There's an enormous amount of silencing of individuals that have a particular voice that's in opposition from that particular individual. And there's an absolute demolishment of the country's economy through the sense of the creation of a plutocratic oligarchy. And so democracy is a very difficult Rubik's cube to put together correctly, I would say. And it's the kind of thing that I think we're seeing in many countries across the globe right now, is the erosion of the principles of democracy based on the activities of one or a few people.
I think there's also another
Absolutely.
parallel. You know, the Democratic Party was questioned not to deliver economic, welfare, and then Trump was chosen as guy who will bring democratic prosperity, and he also couldn't. So the same question remains. But Mohammed, looking at the prospects for the future, uh, I have one question: Who is backing this Professor Kais Saied and internationally? You know, is France
Mhm.
behind, or UAE behind, or some other countries, or no
Mhm.
one? I don't know. Your take
Mhm.
on this. And
Mhm.
also, since both experiments, democratic experiment and this authoritarian experiment did not work, what is the Tunisian people's search now? What they are looking for
Mhm.
as an answer? Do they look in nostalgia to the Bin Ali years
Mhm.
that it was better? So how is your take on those?
Mhm. Quickly before answering that, I really want to say that Kais Saied is really not an anomaly. He really responds to the populism, to the rise of populism worldwide. He is really a perfect example of that, like
Mhm.
what is happening in the United States or in Argentina now or in Italy, where you have populist people with populist speeches and propaganda rising to power and then delivering nothing. But when it comes to Kais Saied's support or international support, there are countries that are explicitly supporting him. We know that Kais Saied has a very good relationship with Algeria. The Algerian regime is very happy with having Kais Saied there as an ally who would respectfully and directly commit to any instruction of the Algerian regime. He's a great ally to them because Algeria always never wanted any probably Islamist government to be anywhere. We have the UAE that supports Kais Saied.
Mhm.
Those are still speculations. We don't know for sure, but the UAE, I'm sure it was involved to an extent with that because we had different rivals supported by different countries. We also know that the European Union, and especially Italy, is notoriously supportive of the current Tunisian regime because Kais Saied is perfectly playing the job of guardsman of the European coasts. He is blocking any migration waves. He is detaining sub-Saharan immigrants. He is assisting Italy in deporting Tunisians back to Tunisia who are undocumented. And he is serving the European Union's and specifically Italy's requests when it comes to the migration question with no questions asked. So he is a perfect candidate for that. The European Union may sometimes raise some questions to when it comes to freedoms or human rights, but on the ground, really, they like him there. And I am pretty sure that they want to keep him there because he is working for them when it comes to the issue of borders. The second question, uh, I truly believe Tunisians deserve democracy and deserve economic prosperity at the same time. I do not think we are any less of any other population who lives in a democratic environment and who has achieved economic prosperity. And I believe also that we have the potential, we have great talent, we are at a great location, we have great resources, we are an open population that is very progressive in general. We have our conservative traditions at the same time, but we're very accepting of the other. So I don't see why we cannot do this. I don't see why we don't deserve to have both democracy, peaceful transition of powers, and we did it before. We remember very well when Beji Kais Saied won the election and walked into Carthage Palace, and Marzouki was waiting for him there to welcome him. They shook hands, they had speeches, and Beji Kais Saied became the president the next day. We are capable of this. We did it, and we can do it again. We might have a dark episode now going on, but we had it before as well, and we will probably solve it as we did. When it comes to the economic question, I know it's also a global crisis now, so every country is probably struggling. But this is also feasible. Maybe we can switch and focus on how to fix our economic models, our means of production, how we are working on them. Do we have a clear economic agenda? How are we dealing with financial institutions internationally? Because I guess that everyone who comes to power in Tunis, when it comes to the economy, is improvising, which is sad, or just listening to international instructions, or what the World Bank is saying, or what the IMF is saying. But just to answer your questions, I truly believe Tunisian people deserve the democracy that they fought for years, the economic prosperity, and they are capable of achieving that.
But my question was, do they look with nostalgia to the Bin Ali
No.
years, or they are
Mhm.
for still they keep their hope for democracy, and are they
Mhm.
united? You know, the secularists
Mhm.
and the Islamists. There are some protests
Mhm.
now I see in the news, but
Mhm.
is this a
Mhm.
powerful united front against the
Mhm.
I mean hijacking democracy and rule of law?
I think now the to answer in a transparent way, I think the tensions between the Islamist sector and the secular, or because the Islamists in Tunisia try to be as secular as possible. So I'm not saying that, and maybe with the left and liberal or organizations is less than when Nahda was in power. They both have their leaders in prison. They both are participating in hunger strikes, and they are both demanding freedoms and protesting in the same protests, which is kind of unprecedented. Are they united? This is questionable. I think as long as now they have a common enemy, they'll probably work together. But I know very well that the political class in Tunisia is very divided on all the
Mhm.
important questions, and they see the world differently, which is okay and should be okay. Otherwise, why are we asking for democracy? There is some nostalgia to Ben Ali era, but that is more, I'd think, nostalgia because it's the past. People forget easily the problems and the issues and just remember the old good days. While Ben Ali probably had at least 100,000 political prisoners under his rule, especially in the 90s. It's just that people forget that very quickly. So I don't think that nostalgia is negating the hope of people for a better future. Even the regular people who support Kais Saied, I think, had good intentions of believing that maybe he's going to deliver something. But I firmly believe he is never going to do that. He absolutely has no plan. He absolutely has no clear solutions to the big questions in Tunisia. He is not willing to cede power at all. I don't think he's even willing to have another election in 2029. If it is going to happen, he is going to run for a third term, which is unconstitutional, but he can easily claim that it's the constitution of 2022, so he has the right of another term. So yes, to answer your questions, Tunisians might have some nostalgia, but also they are very hopeful of the future, and I am personally hopeful, and I don't think this will last.
Yeah, Jesse, any additional question? Any final question to Mohammed?
I'm just amazed at the synonymous nature of geopolitical situation between Tunisia and the United States, and that same sensibility of the discussion being complicated, and the real desperate sense of both citizenry for hope, both politically and economically.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and lots of insights, Mohammed. Thank you very much. I know you witnessed dictatorship, democratic revolution, and then dictatorship again. And I think you cannot go back to your country now, which is similar to my situation. So I
Mhm.
empathize with the Tunisian people. So also, it is very remarkable that you still keep your hope about the future for a democratic Tunisia and democratic Middle East, democratic North Africa. This is very, very important. And we are looking forward to have your book and read it and learn more about the Tunisian experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jesse and Hamid, and hopefully
Thank
we
you
will
so
be
much.
able to witness democracy again, and we will definitely visit our countries again. It's going to happen.
Yes, this is the hope. This is our hope. And thank
Yes.
you for our listeners and viewers for supporting us. And we'll be happy if you subscribe to our channel to not to miss our new episodes and comment, share your opinions, and we'll be happy to meet you in another episode of the timeline. Until then, take care and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.